Katherine Degnen is the Vice President of Product at Fidel. Katherine works across the organization to build and drive forward Fidel's product portfolio. Prior to joining Fidel, Katherine was a part of the team at Zola, focusing on building new business verticals. Her career in product began while working on creating new ways of helping customers save money on everyday purchases at Retail Me Not. So Katherine, the stage is yours.
Great. Hi, everyone. Really nice to meet you all. Today, I'm going to be walking through sort of talking about how real-time data can power user engagement, which, as the other speakers today have talked about, just being a really core piece of an experience. So next slide. Great. I received this email a few days ago. It's from a band I like, so I feel like it's okay to poke a bit of fun of them, and I don't think they're in the audience today, so fingers crossed. But this brand knows that I'm a really big fan of eating out, pre-lockdown, of course. They maybe know that Mondays is exactly the time I start to think about where I'm going to eat that weekend, or in the case of the London reservation rush, 3 weeks from now. But the problem is, this isn't an email about London. This is an email about New York, a place I haven't lived in over a year. All of my past searches have been in the London area. Don't particularly enjoy Scotch. Rent the Runway is sadly no longer available to me, and Dry Bar doesn't exist here. This means with this brand, I've had a broken experience. For the past decade, we've relied on old-fashioned ways of engaging with customers. They make a purchase in store. Great, you can send them an email. But how do you know that that email will reach them at the right moment in their purchasing process? Send it at the wrong time, and you're one click away from ending up in their email bin. The problem with Engagement 1.0 is that it's slow, not personalized, and lacking context. You want to go to the next slide? So you've seen that the way of engaging is broken, but that doesn't mean that consumers are okay with it. User expectations, especially in the COVID period, have risen. Even the most non-tech savvy user understands that companies have unprecedented amount of data on them and expects that to feed into the data and decisions the company makes. Engagement is now table stakes as well. 63% of customers expect personalized experiences. These experiences lead into how the customer chooses who they will do business with, but also how they view the product and service. Not meeting user expectations here can have meaningful impact on your brand's reputation and, in the long run, your revenue. If you want to go to the next slide. Great. So you can see that there's some problems here and a mismatch between the experience we're providing and the customer expectations. By investing in a real-time engagement strategy, you can form a lasting relationship with your customer, which can in turn have long-term impacts on your bottom line. But it isn't just what your customer thinks of you and if you're meeting their expectations. It's actually 53% of customers feel an emotional connection to the brands they purchase from most. So this can actually drive key aspects of your business. By knowing where your customer is in their buying journey, you can increase the likelihood that they will convert. If they're in an earlier stage of understanding, you can provide them with the right information based on your position in the market, rather than a coupon, which might be ignored until they've figured out what they need. If you're able to get to know them as an individual, you can retain them for longer and build up loyalty in a meaningful way. In turn, increase your LTV and reduce the churn of your customers. I don't think I have to tell many people here how important reducing churn is. It can have major implications on your bottom line. A study suggests that acquiring a new user is 5 times as expensive as retaining an existing one. You want to go to the next slide? I've been talking a bit about real-time engagement, and you may be thinking to yourself, well, I do real-time marketing. I talk to my customers in real time. I'm really doing this already. And you might say, what's actually the difference between real-time engagement and real-time marketing? How I would frame it is thinking about it like this. Marketing tends to exist with a singular goal, which is to get the user to buy something or convert. Engagement, on the other hand, seeks to build a lasting relationship with the user. When a customer is marketed to, they're being sold and they know it. The message is usually pushed to them in a time when the company has deemed best, not when it actually works. Engagement, on the other hand, is a two-way street. The customer looks to the company for advice to learn throughout their journey. It's about gaining trust, gaining more information on both sides, and becoming a resource for the user throughout their lifetime. It isn't just a single purchase. It is a lifetime of purchases. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll be quick. So I figured I'd spend most of my time today actually talking to you about how to think about doing this within your company. Obviously, we have a very diverse audience here, as we've talked about before, so it may be a bit broad, but try to take away some of the things that might apply to you. If you want to go to the next slide. So I think everyone can agree that real-time engagement can have meaningful business results. And you might be thinking that this is something that you want to bring into your business. You may be eager to start. You're going to bed at night, dreaming about the numbers and the charts going up and to the right. You're dreaming about reducing your customer acquisition costs, things like that. But this is actually something that takes a bit of time and a bit of thought. Because it's about building a lasting relationship with your users, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into this. To help break this down, there are 3 things I think you need to think through and have a plan for before you kick off building a real-time engagement plan for your customers. The first is strategy. Figuring this out will underlie how you execute your overall plan. The second piece is data. In order to know your customers, you will need to get the data to get to know them better. And then lastly, you need to consider the various places you communicate with your users. Next slide. So the strategy for building a real-time engagement sort of experience for your users will underlie every other decision you make. There are 2 things you need to start with in order to get this going. The first is your own company metrics, and the second is the things that are important to your customers. For the first part, and I think Erin actually mentioned this earlier, is thinking about your company's goals. Looking across your entire customer life cycle is very important here. And you can think about your goals so that you know what your true North Star metric is in order to measure success. When I say a North Star metric, I mean something that really drives your business forward. An example of this could be your customer retention rate, your NPS, etc. So go back to the basics. Think about what moves your business forward, as well as what you're able to measure. The second piece of this is the customer. This is arguably the most important piece. Without understanding who they are and what they need, your strategy will fail. In order to get to know your customer better, you should look at both qualitative and quantitative data. These data, I recognize, may be more easily available for some companies rather than opposed to others. So it's good to consider the level of data and granularity that you can get into. However, I strongly believe there's always something, which is good. If you are a company that has a robust data set of consumer behavior, you should consider yourself very lucky. I'm guessing you have a large data infrastructure and have been working with your customers for years. I'm also guessing that you have a team of business analysts ready to go and ready to run some nice SQL queries. But it's easy to get overwhelmed by a large amount of data sitting in front of you and not know where to start. What I would recommend doing here is formulating a few key questions or hypotheses you have about your users. Write these down. And then you can go into the data, either seeking to use it to understand those questions better and find answers, or prove or disprove your hypotheses. While having a vast data set can be a blessing, you need to narrow your focus in order to contextualize your user in this sea of data. If you don't, on the other hand, have access to these troves of data, there's still ways of taking a data-driven approach to understanding what you need to do. Thinking back to that North Star metric that you've already identified, aim to identify the actions that drive users to do things that advance those North Star metrics. If you don't have access to the robust data we mentioned earlier, you may find that it will be better to look at more qualitative data, which we'll talk about in a second. That being said, Even if you can look at general trends on your customers, it may help you get a better understanding of who they are. It goes back to understanding the key questions you have about your customers, then figuring out what data you would need in order to get those answers. Then you can look at the level of fidelity of data you have access to. While you might not have perfect data that tells you every single thing about every action they take in their journey, there's likely something that can help you get a directional sense of the answer. Everyone, no matter if you are big or small, should, however, invest the time to understand some of the qualitative data around your users. Set up time to interview your customers. Take those questions that you formulated earlier and ask them. Get to know them, get to understand them deeply. Look at your reviews. Understand how they engage with your support team. That support team often serves as your front line for these users and has a lot of experience day in, day out, talking to them and working with them. Give them a voice and make sure they're present at the table. The most important part here is knowing the pain points throughout their buying journey. This includes the discovery phase, when they're sort of figuring out that they have a problem or a need, the researching phase, when they're trying to figure out what can solve or fit that need. Consideration phase is when they're looking through the various competitors in the space. Purchase phase, where we all make money, so we really like it. But also, lastly, the post-purchase phase. Given that this is most meant to be a long-term relationship, it doesn't just end once a user makes a purchase. Getting a full view of your customer and what they feel like builds a relationship will help give you a solid foundation with which to start. You want to go to the next slide? Great. In addition to the data I mentioned previously to help you build your strategy, it's also important to have the right data to build the experience itself. In order to pursue real-time engagement, you need to have a good view of what your users are doing at that exact moment. There's a lot of data you can look to in order to understand the context that your customers are operating in. First, it's good to know where your customers are, not only mentally through those conversations you had earlier, but also physically in that moment. Usually, users are unlikely to share their location data with you unless you give something good in exchange. In a mobile wallet, for example, location-based offers can be used to convince users to give access to their location-based data. From this, you can not only see where they are at that point in time, but with additional analysis, you can see how it relates to their lives. You see them spending a lot of time from, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in a normal non-COVID time. You can guess that, okay, they're probably at work, and that location is their office. You can see where they are at night and derive their home. From that, you can start building an idea of where they are and what they do to help you build an even more custom experience. It's also great to know if your customers are shopping right now. Real-time transaction data like that from Fidel, which we offer through our APIs, can help power a rich experience based on the purchases your users are making at that exact moment. Especially in a rewards program, telling your users that they will get cash back as soon as they make a qualifying purchase can build trust with them, which underlies a long-term relationship. Other data to help with a real-time engagement strategy will depend on what you're trying to accomplish. This could be other things about your users, such as demographic data, or other contextual data, such as connections and friends. Overall, my advice would be to start small with the most impactful things like location and purchase data, and then grow and refine your data set from there to become smarter over time. Next slide. So now that you know the right timing, you need to focus on the right place. This could be within a mobile wallet, via text, chat, in a community, on social, and more. Coming out of your conversations, whether individual or broad, with your customers, you should have a good sense of where they like to engage with your company. As you may guess, each person is different. Look at where your customers are engaging with you on an individual level. You can always ask them as well. You never start a long-term relationship just assuming things about people and never changing that assumption. You can ask them questions. Do they prefer app notifications, SMS, email? That way you can also start forming trust through getting to know them personally. If possible, Look to platforms and places where you can communicate back and forth, not just one way. The goal of what you're trying to accomplish is to form a relationship, which needs to be a two-way street. Over time, once you get to know each other better, you will also know that user better. You can optimize your communications on an individual basis. However, my advice would be to start small with a few platforms based on what the bulk of your users prefer. Next slide. Great. So tying this all together, after you've figured out your strategy, you need the right data and right touch points in order to deliver on this experience. I firmly believe that mobile wallets can serve as a great platform for both. Very bullish on them, which is obviously why we're all here today. On the data side, mobile wallets can have location-enriched experiences built on top of past and real-time purchase data. Fidel's APIs can help you build into your experience this real-time purchase data, complete with enriched data sets like merchant, category code, name, location, and more. This allows you to form a complete profile of that purchase. It also allows you to interact and engage with your users at the exact moment they make a purchase on either Amex, Visa, or MasterCard. Within the wallet, you can build embedded experiences with which to have conversations with your users. Given that everything is in one place, it makes for an optimal touch point on the user side. Next slide. Great. A great example of real-time engagement is with the new GPay app in the US. Google actually partnered with Fidel as well to drive its experience, giving its users access to rich in-store and online offer content with immediate rewards. Kind of walked you through this here, but you can see some of the offers that are live in the GPay app today, like an offer with Panera, Etsy, and Lululemon and Warby Parker. These offers have been set up by the Google team, but a user doesn't need to know any of that. It's very simple for them. They simply link their card, see these offers, and shop on whatever platform they choose. Google, on the other side, is able to immediately notify the user that their cashback has been rewarded. Because they know what their users want, they've built the profile around their users. They can also engage them in this real-time experience through the GPay app. Next slide. Great. So we've talked a bit about real-time engagement and how it marries well with a mobile wallet. It's definitely worth engaging in or investing in a real-time engagement strategy. It's the future of what customers expect. And mobile wallets can serve to be your easiest step there. They're certainly not the only way of doing it, but they are a very good platform. They're contextual, data-filled, and omni-channel, just like your users. Thank you.